Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Know Your Charity. My name is Fahraaz Patel. I would like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, TSTV channel 347. Tonight at 7:30, Africa Muslims Agency will be hosting their live pledge line, of course, as we honor the evening of Laylatul Bara, which is, of course, a beautiful evening where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala closes the new books and opens up the new books as we look ahead to the beautiful month of Ramadan. And tonight, of course, is a beautiful theme that Africa Muslims Agency has, of course, commemorated for this year. 23 nations, one table. This is, of course, uniting the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and allowing us as the community to contribute to communities that are in need. And joining me, I'd like to welcome Ashraf Gangreker. Of course, he's no stranger to the Hilaal TV screens, and he's one of the mainstays of Africa Muslims Agency. Ashraf, assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah for joining us.
Wa barakatuh for us and to the viewership. Hamda, thank you for having us again on your set and on TV with you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Ashraf, let's talk about, obviously, we have to start off with Gaza, and we've seen the devastation through the genocide that has happened there. Africa Muslims Agency wasn't only there from October the 7th. They've been there decades before. Talk to us about the work. For those who maybe do not understand, maybe the work that AMA has done in assisting the residents of Gaza, who of course been under occupation for close to 3 decades.
Absolutely. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And thank you for that question for us, but if you don't mind, I'm just going to preface it quickly in terms of the history of AMA itself. That established 38 years ago by the late Muhammad Farid Chunara. We established this as basically a humanitarian organization to take care of those who are in need, the oppressed, the destitute. And so there's no better example, quite honestly, as you raised that in terms of Gaza. And you correctly say that African Muslims Agency had been in Gaza long before the 7th of October. And it was simply in the sense of providing support, providing aid. September 7th of October 2023 changed the landscape completely. And so what we had done, and we need to understand that AMA has teams on the ground. As long as people are going from South Africa, we're sending people in. They are people, Palestinian people, who face the same challenges, who face the same dangers. And they then part of our team as AMA, and they, in a sense, providing support. To fast forward a little bit, on what we had largely then focused was threefold. Is one, to provide clean drinking water. And we then acquired the use of if you think of a petrol tanker, think of a water tanker like that. A mobile water tanker that people quite honestly can sponsor, that we'll speak about in a second, that would move between towns and provide clean drinking water. Then also there were food packs and hot meals that we provided. And then there was a mobile medical tent that we'd put together, focusing primarily on female gynecological issues, etc., etc. So the work has been intense. I don't think, for us, anybody, we don't need to be sitting here and explaining to our viewers what the conditions in Gaza are like. It's so clear and so apparent. Suffice to say, as much as we say people have returned home, we use the word home loosely because they've returned home to piles of rubble. Yeah. But the sense, and now we hear this notion of, great, there's this other person who wants to buy Gaza and turn it into a real estate. If they didn't give up their homes when they were bombed, when quite honestly, a foreign occupation army moved into their country, their homeland, they're not going to give up their homes for a Mediterranean Riviera. So it's not about home, right? It's about homeland. So for us, the work continues, and in fact, crucially, we want to speak about the sustainability of the work. We'd like to expand with the sense of providing emergency tents. So when people do return to what was their homes, they would at least have some semblance of a structure in which they would be able to live in. So with Ramadan coming, a big theme, and you mentioned the pledge line, obviously we'll talk about that at length, is to then raise funds so that for Suhoor Iftar, our brothers and sisters in Gaza, and indeed the 23 Christian, they are able to, in some small way, take in the mercy that we are able to share by Allah's grace.
And what's important, Ashraf, is that the work that is being done on the ground, of course, we saw that video earlier on, And what you see is that it's non-stop because they're returning to parts of Gaza which have been destroyed. But food, which is a UN-chartered human rights that every single one of us deserve, and African Muslim agencies are making sure that the food is being distributed on a daily basis 3 times a day.
No, absolutely. And I'm so glad you speak about this basic human right, as is the right to water and the right to shelter,
course,
yes.
yeah.
And thus, I think that we need to maybe just clear something up. Everybody, and we've spoken to a number of people, alhamdulillah, and are asking, are you getting aid in? At the moment, no, we're not. So because we have teams on the ground, and I can't stress this enough, they are able to access food items from warehouses that are still maybe operating in Gaza. And in that way, we are then able to acquire food items and make that available. So, irrespective of to the very important United Nations resolution that you refer to, these are simply human beings.
Yes.
And we're going to say Muslim and the Christians who find themselves in this part of the world, who largely been alienated by the rest of the world, yes? So human beings in need, and therefore it's incumbent on us, and I'm going to say particularly as Muslims, particularly at this time, to respond. So yes, it has been. So by the grace of Allah, and it's only by His mercy that everything is possible, generosity of donors, we are able to provide meals. And what we want to speak about for us is the sense of community. That, and part of the pledge line tonight, we want to raise money for a community of, say, 800 people that says, at a cost of 19,000, we can produce these huge pots of appropriate food, meaning food for Gaza, in Gaza, and feed then entire communities rather than going from house to another. So that's way possible.
I want to show to another country in the Middle East, Syria. Ashraf, Syria has gone through a very difficult time.
Sure.
Of course, since the civil war broke. We saw in December a change in the guard of leadership that is occurring there. But people are still suffering because it's taking a very long time for Western sanctions to be lifted. What has African Muslims Agency done in Syria, and how can viewers contribute towards helping our brothers and sisters in Syria who continue to suffer, even though there's a changing guard with
Absolutely, for us. And I'm so glad you say continue to suffer, because it's so easy, and maybe some people will think that, well, no, everything's okay there, so we don't need to worry about Syria. And African Muslims Agency has a very close relationship with Syria in the following way. We might know, and the number of people who have assisted, we have a school in Lebanon, Amman School of Excellence, that was established for Syrian refugee children. These were people who had fled the civil war, 2013, and they were put into camps in Lebanon. And, you know, zero education, zero access to education. Alhamdulillah, AMA established a school, those kids came to us. Now that their homeland is open, some of them rightly, with our support, said, great, we're coming back. And so we've tracked them, and because these are our children, and they've gone back, and sadly some of them had the notion, we're going back to our house. So it is difficult to explain to the children, there is no more house. So that literally we have the footage and the pictures that show families who've left the camps and will now sit amongst the rubble and say, where are we going to sleep? What are we going to do next? So similarly, as in Gaza, food, water, shelter. But we've taken the extra step because of these children who were in our school. We've added the education, angle to it as well, trying to get them into school so that the schooling continues. So this, I want to dispel any notion that things are hunky-dory in Syria. Beautifully you mentioned, sanctions continue, there is a new government, and so there's no magic wand that says simply, all returning people, all Syrians can come back, and suddenly your homes will be restored, etc. It's not going to happen. And so they have a terrible plight. And added to this, both in Gaza and in Syria, is the weather. Extreme cold for us. It is, some friends of mine...
They dip into their winter.
They dip in winter,
now.
and it's so easy for us to alhamdulillah to be enjoying this weather here in South Africa, and then think, wow, no, Middle East, it's always hot, and we forget that these countries are in the northern hemisphere. Friends sent me some, clips from their home in Lebanon, covered in snow. Syria borders that, Gaza borders that, so it's exactly the same. So again, these are brothers and sisters of ours in deep strife, taking incredible strain. And therefore, it's our duty to respond. Not our duty as an organization only. Allah uses us as vehicles, but our duty collectively as an ummah.
Definitely. Well, after the break, I'll continue my conversation with Ashraf Gangreker from Africa Muslims Agency. We're going to be touching, or we're going to be coming close to home, that is, of course, the African continent, and of course, looking ahead to tonight's live pledge line, which will be at 7:30, which of course will coincide with the beautiful night of Laylatul Baraat. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to Know Your Charity. My name is Fahraaz Patel. Of course, we're looking ahead to Africa Muslims Agency's live pledge line happening at 7:30, and of course, this will coincide with the beautiful evening of Laylatul Baraat, and I think everyone knows the rewards that comes with this evening. And I'm still in conversation with Ashraf Gangreker. Ashraf, let's come to our continent.
Yes.
And Africa continues to suffer. But what AMA has done within Malawi and Mozambique has really been a game changer. Whenever I speak to Hassan and Hussein Chunara, they always talk about the boreholes. They always talk about going into these deep rural villages which have been neglected. How much of an impact does AMA continue to have there?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah. AMA is synonymous. Let's just be honest. There are many organizations doing great work, right? So we're not here to take the shine of anybody else. But I think, let's be honest, I think AMA is synonymous with the construction provision of boreholes and water wells. It's been my honor to have been in those villages and to be in the jungles of Mozambique.
Talk to us about those experiences.
It is the most heartening thing
Yeah.
of something that we take for granted. I mean, Habib Hussein and myself, we, for example, we were traveling into, and I want to make the point, when AMA constructs villages, it's not just, let's just, litter the map with a water well, as it were. It's done on a needs basis. A full assessment is done as what's the need of the village. It's never done downtown. Most areas, what it's like. We would drive in a 4x4 for 3 hours, and the driver would stop and say, no, I can't drive any further, it's too bad. Get onto a motorbike, and on a motorbike, off you go. The motorbike would stop and say, now you guys need to walk. And suddenly there's a clearing, and people are waiting for us because we're about to commence the start. The greatest joy, wallah, is to see when water comes up and the response. Like in the movies, the Texas people will say the oil coming up. This is for water. Then we would sleep in the vicinity of the well. The greatest thing is that well becomes the center of the village. People will wake early to make wudu. Will come to the water well to make wudu. Ladies will come to take water home, personal hygiene, etc. But crucially, I think the time we were at in Malawi and Mozambique, people are dying of hunger. There is no rain. There is suffering of the most severe drought. So they would take the water from the water well or borehole, and they'll use it to irrigate the land outside their hut. And that allows them to grow food, and that allows them to eat. That's not been the case because of the drought. And this is then the difference that the boreholes and the water well makes. It's life-changing, but currently, for us, it's life-saving.
Yes, and I'm just looking at those videos over there. Of course, that just gives you an example. It's not just obviously in Africa, where we had some of Afghanistan also.
Absolutely.
I want to touch on Afghanistan because they themselves, of course, are going through such, we have to look previously before the United States of America invaded them. There was prior to that, the Soviet Union, of course, invaded them.
Absolutely.
So Africa Muslims Agency, they also are making quite an impact with regards to assisting the citizens of Afghanistan.
Sure. You mentioned Syria earlier. Our good man, Regional Director Hafiz Hassan, has just returned from Syria. 2 weeks ago, we had a South African delegation who returned from Afghanistan. And the biggest tragedy with Afghanistan is so easily to be the forgotten country. But they've had 4 decades, it's over 40 years of war, turmoil, the highest number of widows and orphans. And the saddest thing is, when our team comes back and tells us they met a family for real with their own eyes of a mother who says, I must decide tonight which child am I able to feed. They came back and informed us, with tears in the eyes, and it was very emotional, that they'd met a mother who had gone and purchased poison because she thought she'll put her children out of the misery. By Allah's mercy, it was on that day that our team pitched up with some goods and could give, So we cannot put water wells in Afghanistan because of the mountainous nature. It's a borehole, that water then gets pumped up the mountain, etc. And people are literally drinking sewage. Literally. And so it's easy to forget about Afghanistan, and we can think, there's no war, there's no conflict. But the suffering is second to none. I just want to come back to Malawi, Mozambique.
Yes, please do.
Yes. And I want to say to you, I want to speak about Malawi and Mozambique as a foreign country.
Yes.
Because we all know a Malawian.
But I mean, it's a SADC region. It's
It
just
really
right
is. It's just next door to us.
Yes.
But in our communities, there are Malawians, there are Mozambicans.
Yes.
I'm sure even up north, I mean, I'm from Cape Town, the Muaddin is invariably a Malawian brother.
Yes,
The
yeah.
caretaker, we know they're
Yes,
working in our
yes, of
businesses.
course.
So it's not a foreign country to us as maybe Afghanistan might be,
Yes.
Syria might be. And so I want you to for the viewers to connect with this person from Malawi who's working for us perhaps, and say, ask him about his family.
Yes.
And invariably will say to you, they are struggling to survive. Water, we do and assist in the establishment, and we are involved in the provision of food, particularly in Ramadan, with our suhoor packs
Sure.
and iftar packs. So you mentioned earlier, 23 countries, one table. In West Africa, we're talking Guinea-Bissau.
Yes.
In the Middle East, we're also including Yemen, again,
Yes,
of
yes.
the poorest countries in
And
the
they're
world.
also sanctioned by the West.
Absolutely. So this 23 countries around one table, our theme, Meals of Mercy,
Yes.
is that in order for us to receive Allah's mercy, we need to share our mercy, and that we all sit around the table of humanity. And either the much or the little that we have, we share with those who definitely have less.
Ashraf, let's talk about tonight's pledge line.
Great.
Meals of Mercy, 23 nations, one table. For the viewer out there that is watching, for the viewer that's going to be involved in tonight's live pledge line, what can they contribute towards? And just the importance of it being tonight, the night of Laylatul Barat.
Absolutely. It's a difficult. The easy answer is donate anything, but I
Yes.
would have structured it a little bit, right? So the night of Barat, I mean, of the narrations and the scholars who teach us, this is the night, and when Allah accepts du'as
Yes, of
and
course.
accepts repentance,
Sure.
which we all need, and
Of course,
Allah's
yeah.
mercy descends
Yes.
even more so than in others, which we all need. And we all know that charity, the giving of charity, is one of the best ways to earn Allah's mercy and protection. So tonight, Africa Muslim Agency comes on proudly onto Hilaal TV and asks our community for help by Allah's mercy and grace, and said, at 19,000 rand,
Yes.
you would be feeding a community of between 700 and 800 people for one entire day, suhoor and iftar. And again, for us, if we extend that, the Prophet ﷺ tells in the hadith
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
that if you break the fast, or you enable the fast of someone, you will get the reward of that person. Now imagine you're getting the reward of 800 people. So 18,000 rand feeds an entire community. I want to say for many people it sounds like a lot of money.
Yes.
I'm not going to sit here and say, well, everybody can do that. I'm aware of the financial constraints we all find ourselves under. But perhaps if you get some friends together, divide this up within a family, or you say, I can't do that, but I have 1,000 rand, 5,000 rand. I have 120 rand, that's the cost of one box. I'm saying to you, don't waste the opportunity.
Sure.
Don't waste this opportunity on this blessed night to say, Ya Allah, this is my contribution, that I invited one other human being to the stable of humanity from 23 nations, including our own country. Let's not forget that there is immense poverty and inequality in our country. So African Muslims is not focused on the overseas or in other parts. We're chanting in the dome. It's saying, and we adhere to that as well. So 19,000 rand feeds the community. We obviously want to generate funds for water wells
Yes.
in Malawi,
I just want
Mozambique
you to touch on
predominantly.
that. I mean, the water wells, boreholes,
Must.
it's still an ongoing project from
Must
AMA.
be.
Yes, yes.
And I want to, particularly in those things, the notion of sadaqatul jariyah,
Yes.
because for as long, if we just stop and think of rewards, that's what we're all searching for.
course, definitely.
A person uses the water from the water well to make wudu, will make salah, will make dua.
Yes.
This is all the reward that's
Exactly.
continuous. If a loved one has passed away in the family, please consider a water well. 16,500 rand for a water well, 65,000 rand for a borehole in Africa, 55,000 rand for a borehole in Afghanistan. Again, it might sound a prohibitive cost, but the rewards, and sometimes we do this not for those who receive. Sometimes we need to do good for ourselves.
Of course, definitely.
Because bottom line, often we think, oh, shame, alhamdulillah, we're not going through that. And it's true, let us be grateful. But Allah tests some people with difficulty.
Yes.
And I believe He's testing us with ease.
Yes.
And this is and sometimes an even more difficult
Definitely.
test, to be able to respond to the sense of ease and comfort.
Yes.
Because I'm not here to guilt anyone. If
Yes.
Allah has blessed us, that is from Him. And our job is to thank Him and to show gratitude. But more than that, our job is to share of the blessings
Sure.
to those who have less. And tonight, AMA's pledge at 7:30 on Hilaal
Yes.
is an ideal opportunity to do that.
We've got 2 minutes left, Ashraf. The impact Africa Muslims Agency has made across the world, how does that really show the power of not just Muslim NGOs, not just South African NGOs, but from a humanitarian perspective, that if we all get together as humanity, that difference can be made across the world?
Oh, absolutely. We've never done this for name, fame. We seek Allah's pleasure, and we are grateful that He's used us as vehicles by people donating to us, etc. The impact, for example, the children at the school in Lebanon, and we've established one here in Finetown.
Sure.
High quality education, the change in the confidence of their level. In a village that previously somebody needed to walk for 10 kilometers to collect water, to have that water in the village, that level of empowering. And quite honestly, those who either didn't have shelter or food.
Of course. Yeah.
And so that their du'as, their gratitude is to Allah and to all those who made it possible. When we, even if it's by a slight degree, lift and uplift a single human being, that we have positively impacted on their life, collectively, we are a vehicle, then I think, then inshallah Allah's mercy will be upon us. So we are here, as every other NGO, Muslim or not, to improve the lives of those who suffer.
Ashraf, I'm going to just ask you, we got just a
Sure.
minute. We've been allowed a minute by our director, Yemi. Just your final message to the viewer ahead of tonight's pledge.
Bismillah. I want to say, firstly, we are grateful to everyone, Hilaal TV and everyone for the continued support. Tonight's a special night, and you know it's written that Allah's mercy, as I said, we all need it. And one of the biggest ways to share and give in charity. Today, I just want to remind people of their own humanity. It's easy to speak about the suffering. It's more difficult to ask yourself, so what am I going to do? I always say, don't look into your wallet, look into your heart and say, oh Allah, here I am. This is what I'm prepared to do to improve the life of another. We are raising money for meals of mercy. Let Allah's mercy descend upon us, but we can only get Allah's mercy if we show mercy to others. Tonight is an opportunity to do that.
Ashraf, it's been an absolute pleasure
Pleasure's ours.
to have this conversation. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant Africa Muslims Agency all the best, all the success
Ameen.
ahead of tonight's live pledge line. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
Wa
wa
alaikum
barakatuh.
salam wa rahmatullah Fahraaz. Thank you, Jazakallah, for having us.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Don't forget, tonight, live on Hilaal TV, 19:30, Africa Muslim Agency's live pledge line. You can make a difference tonight, and you can contribute towards that pledge line. From myself, Fahraaz Patel, the rest of the team in Johannesburg, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.